Welcome to tonight's NIETOC virtual workshop series. We're going to be doing the workshop on mining for literature. It's going to cover all of the different places that we would go to as coaches to find potential, stories and topics that would help our students compete for the speech season. My name is Jill Lofald, and I am a coach at Duluth-Denfeld in Duluth, Minnesota. I have been coaching speech and debate and directing theater for over 40 years. And so I am delighted to be a part of the NIETOC virtual workshops. I'm also on the NIETOC board of directors. And so it's with great pride and excitement that we are continuing to be able to have some coaches workshops and education during the tournament. And just a shout out to your students that are participating over the week in our NIETOC tournament, and I wish you all the best of luck. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you, and that will help us kind of go through the different areas and the different topics. I have presented this Mining for Literature workshop in my Minnesota. We have a state conference every fall, and so I've had the opportunity to share and do this type of workshop before. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to go and share, and we can get started. But welcome and thanks for coming to this workshop. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to share my screen and hope that will help all of us see that. So again, the topic is mining for literature, and I am from Duluth-Denfeld in Minnesota. And if we were together, I would then want you to introduce yourself, and I welcome you to email me and tell me that you dropped into the session, and maybe tell me what you found new and that would help you as you start next year. And also give me ideas of where you get literature from and pieces and topic ideas. And I can add it to the PowerPoint, and it will just be a wealth of information as we go forward over the years. So again, it's really great to be with you tonight. And I always like to start with quotes. It's just a little bit of how I motivate my team and how we start our team meetings. I use these quotes to suggest topics. I use quotes to help us get into some other team motivation messages during the season. I use quotes on our bus rides to different tournaments, and I have them posted in our classroom and in our practice rooms. And so I'm just sharing some of my favorite quotes, or quotes that I would use during the season and other times. Also just in my classroom as an English teacher, and I would use quotes to start different connections to poetry units or to novels that we were reading. So I'm just love to gather quotes, as probably a lot of us do. So one of my favorites is life like an automobile is driven from the inside out, because it always reminds me to coach and teach from my heart, and to really always take in the hearts of my coaching staff and my students. So I love that one. And I love the one at the bottom of the page too, from my friend Rebecca Meyer-Larson from Moorhead, Minnesota. Rebecca and I often do this session together at our Minnesota conference. And I know at the beginning of the season, when we were really all trying to get into the virtual nature of how we were going to compete, she reminds us that creativity flourishes with obstacles. And I just thought that kind of captured the heart of this season as well. So again, quotes are great. Here's some other ones that I've used during the COVID-19 pandemic, and ways to just kind of keep us moving forward during this time. And life doesn't get easier or more forgiving, just that we get stronger and more resilient. And so there was just lots of opportunities for some very heartfelt talks, heartfelt connections with our team this year and with coaches throughout the state and the country. So mining for literature, NIETOC 2021. I tried to work with a budget, and I have a little bit of money. I'm blessed to have the ability to write grants and the ability to do some fundraising. I think that all of us as speech coaches know the value of having the opportunity to do some grant writing, and we all are probably engaged in fundraising of some sort. Some of my favorite ones are, bagging groceries at our local Super One, or we've often had rummage sales and done well there. We have also, picked up litter after parades, or been a part of the air show in Duluth that we help parking areas and concession stands. So lots of opportunities to build a budget. I don't have a large budget. I would think I spend between $300 and $500 a season on materials, and that includes subscriptions for things, brief books for debate, other types of materials, and some years are more than others. Lately the team has been a little smaller, so maybe that $300 and $500 budget is about where I am, and other years it might creep higher. But I also try to encourage my colleagues. There are many coaches that I've worked with over the years that have no budget. There are some that have no budget, but when they go into the administration with a list of what of materials they want to purchase, they are granted those abilities. And so, just know that we all have a variety of budgets, and maybe you spend a whole lot more than I do, maybe you spend much less than I do, but again, we also are such a sharing community here in Minnesota, and I'm sure across the nation, where if I can help another coach by sharing a scanned playbook, or if I can have them come over to my building and borrow scripts or books or materials that I have, I'm more than willing to do that. And so if you need some help in that area, please don't hesitate to email me. Materials that I try to purchase are materials that I think are on topics and interests that my team has. Oftentimes I will ask them at the beginning of the season to brainstorm potential issues or current events or things that are near and dear to their heart, things that are happening in their circle of friends, experiences that they are reading about in their own reading clubs or their own discussion with friends and family. So it's always trying to create materials that our team would be interested in using as performance pieces. And then I also reach out to coaches, and we try to share certain books that we're reading and searches that we're finding. And I do a lot of sharing and talking, and that's why I love our fall speech conference that happens most every year, although last year we did it virtually, and hopefully we'll be in person this year. But I like to share with coaches and hear what their ideas are for topics and ideas and possible sites to visit to get ideas for selections. And then the big part, it has been a big part of my program for many, many years, is I share this PowerPoint, this very PowerPoint that I'm sharing with you. I share year in and year out with my team. And I try to gather my team together in summer months or over Christmas vacation and do, some kind of speech camp. And we then share this PowerPoint. And I really feel like in order for coaches not to burn out and for just the longevity and the growth of team, is you have to share and teach your team how to find materials, how to read scripts online, and how to dig in and do a lot of the searching for their own speech topics. I can provide the material, which is why I'm here today, is to share with you the sites and the places I might go to find materials so that we can start there. And then I also, show them other places they can visit within our city, whether that is college libraries or our local bookstores. I have more quotes, for the COVID, but again, I was going backwards, so we'll go forwards. Categories that I cover in this PowerPoint, because I am a Minnesota coach, I want you to know that in Minnesota, we are an after-school program, so I don't, and most Minnesota coaches do not have, an actual competition speech class that they meet with during the day. Our teams begin at 3:30 usually, and we practice in individuals or in small groups or captain practices Monday through Friday, starting at 3:30. So that's a little bit different. And then our categories, we have interp events that include, serious drama, and that's all materials that come from plays and movies. We have serious prose, which comes from short story collections, essays, magazines, fiction books, nonfiction books, things that are in that genre of serious prose. We have humor, and that can come from humorous prose. It can come from play scripts, movies, television shows, whatever you find that is following the rules of where materials are situated in your state. But we have drama, serious prose, humorous. We have duo that can come from play scripts and movies and television play scripts and other novels and short stories as well, children's literature for sure. And then we've had the category of poetry. In Minnesota, we don't have the category of poi as a Minnesota State High School League event. We do offer it as an experimental category at many of our tournaments, especially over the last 2 years, but it's not an official event that we have at our state tournament. And so it is offered at some tournaments, not all. I know that you're going to be able to find poi material in all of the different materials we're going to share tonight for these events. And then we also have what we call public address events, and that's oratory, informative. We have an event called Great Speeches, which I think in other states might be called non-original oratory. But Great Speeches is also an event here where, the speeches are done by people that have a published speech that we can use for that, and we have some analysis. I show a few sources on my PowerPoint for Great Speeches, but not many, and many of you don't have that event in your state. So again, going further on to where do I find materials? Where do we go? And again, I call these Lofald's favorites. It is not an extensive list. I mean, my goodness, there are coaches probably watching this workshop that have many more sites than I do, and I hope you will share those and we can continue the PowerPoint to grow. And it can seem overwhelming for some coaches that are fairly new in this activity. Then where I go for materials and how many places there are that you can search for materials, certainly can seem overwhelming. And again, we are a very friendly and helpful group of coaches. So reach out to us, and I will share and explain and answer questions to help us all be better at finding certain materials or materials for our team for competition. And these are sites that I regularly visit. They're script sites and anthologies or novels. I try to use a variety of sources when I order pieces that I think are going to be competitive. I do a lot of my ordering starting about now or next month and over the summer. I try to have most things that I think will work for the season by the end of August. I often do a summer camp in August where I'm looking for my speech and debate students to potentially start looking and finding their topics and their scripts and their pieces. Now in Minnesota, we are different than a lot of states where our debate season goes from late August and our first competition is usually the end of September. So we debate in September, October, November, and our state tournament is in January. And then our speech season in Minnesota starts unofficially. It can start in December, but our competitions don't start for the Minnesota State High School League until mid-January, and our state tournament is in April. Now, some of our schools, mine included, I'm a National Speech and Debate Association school, and so we often will do maybe a tournament or two in November and December. But by and large, my majority of my team competes in debate from September to December and in speech from January to April. So that's a little different. And again, so I do a lot of my ordering to be ready at the end of the summer, but I also, especially for speech, will continue to research, read, and look for stories and topics that might just be coming out in October and November. So we do a lot of ordering continuing through about the end of November. And then it's just that process of reading, and more reading. And so I often give things to other coaches. I invite my alumni to my speech camp in August and try to get as many of them reading scripts and poetry collections and researching maybe certain newspapers and topics for oratory and informative. And then I also, like I said, bring my team in August to look at those things and to read some more. And I just try to get as many people as I can to read and to help us find materials that might work for the competitive season. I also, again, teach members of my team how to find their literature. A lot of sources let you look inside the book or read certain scripts online until near the end. And that always helps too, if you can train your students to know what websites offer the opportunity to read scripts. That would be a great add. And again, visiting college libraries and city libraries is also very valuable. Again, I like to watch for trends in categories. Sometimes I think of like a trend, like probably a few years back now, it became very evident that finding movie scripts and TV scripts was becoming much more open and available. And so I kind of saw that as a trend and started then to do more of my topic and category and selection searching on our movie script sites or on television sites. And so that was, I thought, a trend. I thought that a trend in humor was becoming much more of a relationship type of story that was funny. And so that kind of opened up doors of opportunity to look for other types of stories to tell in humor. In informative, it's been, I think, at least in my opinion, a trend that's tripping a little bit close to oratory, but still very engaging on informatives that had some value connection growth for all of us to listen to and to learn about. So again, when I say watch for trends and categories, it's fun to see what's developing and changing. By all means, we want to grow and change and learn from each other and learn from our students. So that's just some examples. I watch final rounds, and oftentimes I write down titles of scripts and authors, not so much because I want to find that story, because that's not really something that I'm geared and focused on, but I do want to see where they found it, the publishing company, the play script house, the online source. So again, those are just tips and suggestions about where you can go to find materials. I also tell my team and my assistant coaches and all of you to be open to looking at current events. Oftentimes when there's current events happens, and sometimes they're tragic and they're full of crisis, and other times they are events that happen that make us rise up and make us see the light and do things differently. And oftentimes those current events are going to be turned into a movie or a book or a play. And so again, it's always interesting if you're thinking about where do you go for materials. I also try to train my coaching staff and my team to really pay attention to current events, because in maybe 4 months to a year, there's going to be something connected to that event. And last too, when we're looking for materials, it's important to know your kids on your team. And I know that's not always possible for our new students, but our returning students, I usually try to have a time one-on-one with them about the end of the season, and then again near the beginning of our competitive season, where we just sit down one-on-one and we brainstorm what kind of stories they're interested in, subjects they're interested in, and what they see themselves being able to put their heart in, going back to my quote that life is like an automobile. I really want them to tell stories that they have the ability to have their heart in it as well. So those are just some tips and suggestions. One of the tips I have found too is we all are using SpeechWire, and we want to bless Ben Stewart, of course, but we're all using SpeechWire for our ability to host tournaments, or most of us are. And also SpeechWire keeps results. If you look on the left side of the home page, you'll see that there are many, many state tournaments and college level tournaments that SpeechWire hosts, and they have the results on. And if you click on some of the results, not all of them, but I know that some states require when you register your speaker to put in their title. So you might want to see the roster in the final round or the semifinal round of humor or duet acting or drama or prose. And some of them will have their titles next to it. And again, I'm not interested necessarily in finding that particular topic or story, but I am interested in where it's from. What's the publishing house or the store or the script house that cutting or that story came from. But that being said, if it's making it to a semifinal at state tournament and it's a topic or a story that I have not really known about, well, then I certainly am going to investigate and think about how that might work for students on my team. So again, visiting SpeechWire results, and then I say visit other state association speech pages, because I know that the Minnesota State High School League keeps a copy of our state program on their website. It's hard to find, so if you want me to walk you through that, you can just email me and we can, kind of help in that way. But our Minnesota State High School League site keeps our programs on their website, and every one of our programs has all of our participants' titles of their scripts and their authors and their topics for oratory and for informative. And that's just another great place. And I can't believe that there might not be other state associations that do the same. I'm familiar with Illinois State High School League, and I know that they often will have their titles for their semifinal finalist rounds in their state events. So that's, again, just a tip and a suggestion. So here's a list that I have started with. And I kind of started with the places that we might go to as coaches that are places where you order materials, and most of the time the materials are already just a 10 to 15 minute story or duo or humor, and we then can have that readily available for our students. And so as we go through this list in this workshop, I'm not going to just list and mention all of them. I might look at the list and say, here are 3 or 4 of my favorites. And then we'll all have access to this PowerPoint, and you can pause and you can write down what you need to write down. And so we can do it that way when we go through this PowerPoint. So some of the ready-made publishing places that I tend to go to, I go to Forensic Fanatics. It is a yearly subscription-based opportunity for coaches. I think many of you are familiar with it, but I have found that to be a valuable place, not only for my students to go for the actual competition piece, but they also, if you scroll to the end of one of their uploaded scripts and cuttings, you will see what book it's from, what play it's from, what collections it's from, what publishing house it might be from. And that's valuable for me as well. I mean, that just tells me where that piece came from, and I can either add it to my list of where to go for pieces and materials, but I just like to know what other places coaches are finding potential cuts from. So I like Forensic Fanatics for that reason. But I've been a member and a subscriber for Forensic Fanatics for many, many years. And I've just appreciated that ability to go and find poetry. I especially like their poetry because poetry books and poetry collections are all on internet, a lot of them. So I'm not spending a lot of my dollars out of my material budget on poetry because it's out there on the internet. That is accessible for us. It's legal for us to use it as long as it has easy access and anyone can find it. At least that's the rules in Minnesota. And again, I enjoy Forensic Fanatics. I sometimes will take some of the way they have put together a cutting, but I go and get the original source, which is always what we want to do. And I sometimes have our students and our coaches rework that, but we do have a foundation to start with. The Perfect Performance was one of the first subscription or purchasing of cuttings that I've ever done in my career. And that probably started a good 15 or plus years ago when I met Damon Wilson at a booth at a NSDA, a national tournament. And I invited him to Minnesota to do a speech camp with my students. But it began a journey with the Perfect Performance, and they have a script vault of cuttings that come from full-length plays. And I really loved that ability to be able to have a cutting, a 10-minute cutting, but it comes from a 3-act or a longer novel or script or movie where you can really share with your students the whole story, the whole script, and they can get a lot more depth into their internalization and their characters when it's more than just a quick 10-minute, made 10-minute story. But The Perfect Performance has a vault of selections. And one of the things I loved about Damon Wilson's business is that when you ordered a 10 or 12-minute cut from a full-length book or story, he also sent you the script or the book, and he had highlighted where the cut comes from. And that was how I really developed a finer tuning of how to do cutting. So there's lots of things we learn as coaches along the way. And so I just want to highlight that. I love the Interp store because I've always felt that his booth at NSDA too is very welcoming, and he's very supportive of our community. And Always Writing for You with Chrissy Thomas is another area, another business that I like to support and continue their hard work for our community. Okay, then we've got the classics, Samuel French, which is now called Concord Theaters or Theatrics, and dramatists and dramatic and play scripts. And again, these are just play scripts that I use for drama, duo, and humor. And again, these are places that I go to. And when I go to their sites, I usually like to look for things under new acquisitions. I often like to search for like 1 or 2. I like limit the characters. Like if I'm really, really looking for a great drama story for a female, then when I go to all of these sites, I'm going to limit my characters to 1, and I'm going to put the gender into female and see what comes up in the mix. Oftentimes over the years, it's the same ones. They don't always make a plethora of one-woman shows, but oftentimes if I go there, rather every couple months or so, I will see that there are new publishings of one-woman or one-man shows. I also try to do 2 characters for maybe a duo. Duo for me, though, can also come from multi-character scripts, as can our other drama and humor cuts as well. But these are just some of the classics that I go to. Here's just more. The Script Fly and Script City is where I like to go for movie scripts. I go to Faber and Faber for plays. And I go to Baker's and Original Works and Brooklyn and Applause. And there's probably so many more that you can give me to add. But our list continues with the International Center. And I love the Humana Festival. I don't always get something out of Humana Festival's collection, but it's just become kind of a expectation. I mean, I think I've got them all lined up on my shelf in my speech materials area, and it's almost a sense of pride that I've got them for the last 15 years or so. But there have been incredible duos and incredible opportunities for our students, both male and female, to find their materials in a Humana Festival anthology. And again, the last one, Scraps from the Loft, I can remember, again, going to a invitational and hearing an incredible drama performance, going home, Googling the title and the author, only that it led me to this Scraps from the Loft, which is an online that has movie scripts and comedy scripts, and they are transcribed, and the words are right there. So in Minnesota, that's the important thing for the rules. Again, some more. The children's literature is always, open, and there's tons of places to get children's literature. I visit the off and off Broadway sites on their websites just to see what plays are being produced off and off Broadway, maybe titles that look intriguing. That's where a lot of one character shows are being done. So I look there. I look to the Kennedy Center. Oftentimes, they'll have, different playwrights being featured, different speakers sharing about new scripts or new movies coming out. There's certainly podcasts have become very popular, and some of them have transcripts, and so they become material sites. And then sources too for oratory, informative, and also for prose would be Mental Floss magazines. They have things that are creative. They have ideas for oratory and informative. I go to a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff is a book I've used in my classroom. I've used it for team motivation. It's the original one. There's Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for teachers. There's Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for families. There's Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for teens. But the original one is the one that I continue to use to motivate. It's just got great page and a half little messages, but I think almost every one of the 101 that are in this book, I have seen in some way, shape, or form as an oratory topic. So I just throw that out there as a place for oratory ideas. There's some poetry sites, and I've got more in the next slide. Psychology Today is always a given that I look for that online, or I pick it up at a Barnes and Noble, but I like to use Psychology Today for informative and oratory ideas. And again, just browsing magazine racks at any place. I put Barnes and Noble here, but any of your favorite local bookstores, your business community-owned shops are places that I love to go to as well. Again, more poetry sources, Button Poetry, Write Bloody, The New Yorker, both for prose and poetry, chapbooks, palette poetry, and then I think I've even got more poetry sites. So there's plenty of poetry out there for all of us to look, or again, share with your students, and they can find poetry pieces. At one of the more recent Minnesota workshops that I did on this topic, on mining for literature, I passed around my notebook and had coaches write down other sources that they go to for public address events, and especially poetry, probably prose. And this was the list that I got, everything from Slate Magazine to The Root, and NPR and Minnesota Public Radio. And again, even morning shows. This morning I was listening to, I think it was, I'm gonna, Ryan and Kelly, I think, and they were interviewing Julianne Margulies, who's an actress, and she just wrote a book called Sunshine Girl, and it's just out this week, and it sounds intriguing. And so I immediately went to my Amazon and I found the book and put it in my wish list. And I do that so that I hold on to those titles. But I find a lot of opportunity in morning shows and in news segments where they're interviewing the authors of new books for potential pieces as well. And again, nonfiction best-selling books, again, perusing Amazon's bestseller list, perusing the New York Times, book list, perusing the shelves at local bookshops, and other Barnes and Nobles where the bestsellers and the new fiction or new nonfiction books are out. I look through the business section for what's happening in the business world. There's oftentimes the ability to find a book on a topic that also relates to oratory. Not too long ago, I was in the business section, and I think the book title was like Learning from Fred. And it was really about the mailman whose name was Fred, who noticed that someone wasn't collecting the mail, and that started the chain reaction of care and connection that we saw with our postal deliveries and their ability to understand community. And I think it was something like, think like Fred, or work like Fred, or be like Fred. And I picked it up, and it really was a seed for the next oratory season. So perusing the business section is also good. For self-help and psychology sections, I also like to subscribe and read the commentary sections of our major newspapers throughout the country, the Boston Globe and the Washington Post and the New York Times. If you go to their commentary section, what are they writing about? What are the leaders and thinkers and writers? What's of concern for them in our world and in our country? And oftentimes you'll find informative or oratory topics as well. One of the magazines that I found in our library many years ago is called Teaching Tolerance. I think it only comes out 4 times a year. And it's written specifically for middle and high school teachers and students. And I just find that it's a wealth of potential topics and ideas to present to your team. So again, Amazon is probably everybody's favorite friend, and you can, limit your search and you can find searches. Our NSDA, our National Speech and Debate Association, if you're a member there, and sometimes I suggest to many colleagues of mine in Minnesota that are not National Speech and Debate Association members, I tell them to join just for the team resource package, because there's a lot of things that can help speech coaches. And I've been so proud and impressed with the growth of NSDA over the last 10 years, and just their online presence and all of the resources that they have opened up and provided for the speech coach community, speech and debate coach. NPR and podcasts have certainly become a thing. TED Talks, Moth, the Moth podcast has now turned into, stories and publications and books. And so that's an incredible source for our students as well. I like to listen to Sunday morning or any talk news shows, because they are usually doing a book review. And so we can look at that. And they're also very much a part of the current events going on in our country. Again, Mining for Literature is all about, what are some literature and mining things that we can have for our coaches' education. And, even Pinterest has sites dedicated to coaches, boards that have, relevant and good information on coaching and finding materials. I love to listen to Sindra Kemphoff. She is a Mankato, Minnesota University professor who works with the sporting teams in sports psychology for Mankato. And I met her when I worked at Gustavus Adolphus's summer camp. And, she just was able to share with our campers so much about a winning attitude and the psychology of winning. And it just doesn't apply to athletes. And I just thought it was fascinating. So I continue to follow her on YouTube. I also am a big fan of Joe Ehrman, and he writes a book called Inside Out Coaching. And our Minnesota State High School League has partnered with him and have created, modules and education for coaches. And Minnesota State High School League calls it Why We Play. Joe Ehrman just calls it Inside Out Coaching. And again, it's coaching from the heart, knowing the heart. I am continually reminded of the incredible connection coaches have with our students. And it's an opportunity for us to really, reach for the heart of our students and build their character along with their skills of communication. And again, I think that Joe Ehrman is passionate about, connecting with coaches and reminding us that sometimes students spend more time with coaches in their high school career than they do their own parents. And that's an incredible opportunity, one that we have to hold dear. And it's a platform for us to, to be really influencers, but we have to understand our own heart and, teach from the heart as well. So I also enjoy Pat Williams. And I use all of these just as motivation when I am coaching and working with the team. Again, I want to remind all of us too that for every script and book and magazine that we purchase, we don't always find strong performances. I sometimes wish I would just hold a big rummage sale, because of 35 years coaching at Denfeld, I have acquired so many scripts and books that I think other programs could use and benefit from. So, and I'm sure many of you that are listening and watching this workshop are also very well aware that there's a lot of material sitting in our coaching offices and our bookshelves. But we don't always find that strong piece out of that. But sometimes we buy a collection and we get 3 or 4 really great stories or topics for our students to share in that season. But I do ask too my colleagues. I'm an English teacher, so a lot of my colleagues are in book clubs. So another way of trying to find and mine for where to get pieces is to ask our colleagues in book clubs. And I know that there are sites that we can Google too that will be like the best books that book clubs are reading, and we can maybe access that. I also am a watcher of the Tony Awards. I love to get my speech team kids, and because I was a theater coach as well, I have those students that can come in and we kind of make a night of it to watch the Tonys. And oftentimes some of those plays are going to become potential topics or stories for next season. I go to the New York Times top selling lists of books. And again, just lots of different opinion and commentary pages on newspapers. Again, I think I'm a big proponent of teaching your team how to search for their own performance piece and topic. I like to create PowerPoints and presentations to share with coaching staff and your team. I like to show them the websites that have the ability to read scripts online. And I just try to get as many of my team and my coaching staff able to know where to find materials and help. Again, good luck, and if we can help, please contact us. Finding materials for your team is one of the most challenging parts of being a speech coach. And again, I know that this workshop might seem overwhelming for some of us. It can be a lot of work, and it's okay to not buy as much material every year. It's okay to, use past cuttings and give them to, other students on your team, let them tweak it and maybe find different ways to cut it and to start it and to end it. But again, finding materials is, a big part of our job. It is for me, I feel like that's one of my main goals, is to provide an opportunity, a library, and let them find the story, but I want to provide that for you. And again, I try to reach back to alumni or even to my teaching colleagues that might have time to, do some reading during the summertime. So we're coming to the end of our workshop, and I just want to thank you again for attending and dropping in to see what you can glean and learn and share in this Finding Material workshop. I want you to share your email with me, to give me a note that you watched and what you learned and what you could add for all of us. And again, we'll just continue to have the opportunity to be together. And next year, I'll be looking for you at NIETOC, and we can do this session more in person. But I do understand that the whole pandemic has taught us how to communicate virtually. And it might be a way that we can continue to educate and reach out to our coaching community when we have the opportunity to create virtual workshops. So again, thanks for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again. Good night. And I'm still recording, so here I am. And again, I just want to say good night, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to present the workshop. And on Saturday at 12:30, there is a workshop that is live, and it's called Tackling the Tough Topics. And I'll be there with a number of other coaches throughout the country. And so I invite you to attend that workshop as well. So again, thanks for coming.